It's not that often. There's some such good words, of course, that Paul has written throughout the years, and some of it is simple instruction. We know that God is love. We know that God says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength. Love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and the prophets hang on these two commandments. We know that we're supposed to love our enemies. We know it up here anyway. Sometimes it doesn't look that great coming out here. But there's some words in Colossians that I'm reminded. And it starts off with this beautiful statement that you can read this as yourself. You can put your name in there. Peter, as God's chosen son. But what it says is, in Colossians 3, starting at verse 12, therefore, as God's chosen people. God's chosen people. God chose you. Holy and dearly loved. A lot in that statement. Clothe yourselves with compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. Bear with each other and forgive whatever grievances you may have against one another. Forgive as the Lord forgave you, and over all these virtues put on love, which binds them all together in perfect unity. Let the peace of Christ rule in your hearts, since as members of one body you were called to peace, and be thankful. Let the word of Christ dwell in you richly as you teach and admonish one another with all wisdom, and as you sing psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs with gratitude in your hearts to God. And whatever you do, whether in word or deed, do it all in the name of the Lord Jesus, giving thanks to God the Father through him. There's a lot in there. But I might ask the question this morning, did you put any thought into what clothes you wanted to put on? Did you give any thought to how you were dressed and groomed? Now, for me, it's relatively easy. My poor wife has to go through way more than I do. Because with me, it's easy. I got black pants. We start there. There's not much choice. We're going with black pants today. Probably a pair of black socks to go with them. Then it's just a shirt. Well, I've got a limited number of shirts. My biggest question is always the tie. But that's because I'm partially colorblind. So I always got to ask if I'm picking the right tie. But I do think about it. I think about what I want to wear here and how I want to look. And because our outfits, what we're wearing on the outside, makes a difference. If I go back to the year 1961, the year I was born, my father and mother owned two vehicles. They owned a brand new 1961 Dodge something or other. Doesn't matter. I wasn't big enough to drive it anyway. And my dad drove his 1929 Model A every day back and forth to work. And he kept running. Now, they were not considered dream cars then. They were not kids. They didn't have great value. In 1961, Dad said, you bought it for $100 and you sold it for $100. It was just a Model A. But the story goes that he was working on that car, the Model A, one day, and he had to go get some parts for it. So he took the other car and he went in his work clothes up to the gas station up the street, and he went in there, and the guy actually refused to serve him because he looked downtrodden. He didn't look like what the guy thought a customer should look like. Not too many of you met my dad, but he wasn't one for necessarily taking those things well. So he went home, and he showered, and he got into one of his suits that he would wear to work each and every day as an engineer for the city of Ottawa, and he went back to that gas station in his brand new car, and the guy was fawning all over him. What can I do for you, sir? How can I help you? Blah, blah, blah. And Dad just said, I was here 45 minutes ago. You remember the guy that came in and you wouldn't serve because he says, but now you've got all sorts of attention for me. Needless to say, Dad just left him then. But the reality is that our clothes do show on the outside, and they speak to those around us. They might communicate how you feel. They might communicate your intent. They might communicate that you're all business, or that you may be dressing to impress those people around you or someone special. There was a day Mary and I had a meeting at CAS, and it was a family meeting. It was about the care of the child we had at the time, and the parents were invited. It happened to be that I had a funeral to do right after that meeting, so I went to that meeting dressed in a suit. The biological dad just about fell over. He was so scared because I was dressed in a suit, because your image changes depending on how you dress. You're not trying to necessarily, but it happens. But the reality is that I have clothes for every day. I don't work on the van in this outfit. I have other clothes. I have my good Mackinac flannel jacket, and I have my dirty ones. I have the lounge clothes for inside. I have stuff for working outside, and the odd thing to dress up in, because, believe it or not, there's the odd time I don't mind impressing the lady of the house. The reading from Colossians tells us something about clothes too, though. But what it speaks about aren't like the clothes we wear for all the different things we do. They aren't just ones that you wear on special occasions, or to work in, or to lounge in, or maybe that one time in your life. These are clothes we need to put on every day. If we're going to think of others as greater than ourselves, if we're going to love God and love people the way we're supposed to, then we need these clothes, and we need to put them on. They're clothes for our spirit. And when we do put them on, trust me, the people around you are going to be glad to see you. They're going to be pleased. They're going to be happy to be seen with you. Because with these clothes on, you are different. Compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, patience, forgiveness, and love. Clothes that money can't buy. Not in Kirkland Lake, not in North Bay, not in Toronto, not online. You can't buy those clothes. Those clothes are given to us by God. Why? Because He loves you. Because He chose you to be His own. And because we were naked, so to speak, and we didn't have anything to wear. Adam and Eve all started off so well, but then they decide they don't need God. They could be their own gods. And then they find themselves outside the Garden of Eden, outside of God's will, outside of God's life. And it says that they felt naked and that they were ashamed. And they were unlikely cold, too. Now, I don't know if that's exactly how it was, but I can tell you that's how it is for us right now. The human condition that every one of us is born into. We are naked and ashamed and cold. We're full of flaws and failures and alienation from God, and it leads to death. But Christ entered into the world. He came as the person of Jesus. He joined Himself to our condition to change our condition. And when we join to His life through faith, when we become born again into a new life in His kingdom, where the way of the world doesn't apply anymore, now we have a choice. What once would have made us just despair and give up no longer has to have that effect. And once where we were naked and ashamed and cold, now we can be dressed and dignified and warm. Compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, patience, forgiveness, and love. Spiritual clothes. Compassion, literally, compassion means a heart of pity. Compassion is an inner attitude you each have toward each other, a fullness of tender caring for and about the other's vulnerability and strengths, which will overflow into how you treat those around you privately and in public. Compassion. Kindness. You've got some of that outerwear kindness on, and you're going to be looking for the well-being of those around you, particularly your loved ones. And as you deal with each other's weaknesses and sore spots, kindness is a garment that has healing within it. Humility. Humility. Oh Lord, it's hard to be humble when you're perfect in every way, is an old country song. And that seems to be the way of the world. That everybody may think they're perfect, but their pride is killing them, and it's killing those around them. Lack of humility, that pride, leads us to every kind of struggle. Humility recognizes that those around us, those that we love the most, have equal status. That each other has needs and plans which are equally valid as our own. Gentleness. Garment of a God-controlled person. When you put on gentleness, the people around you, the people you're in relationship with, can take off their self-defensive armor. They can take off their wariness and their fearfulness, and they can put on trust. We definitely need that garment, that piece of clothing of gentleness. How many of you are good without patience? Well, yeah, that was quite a show of hands. Me too. Patience. Lord, give me patience now. Be careful what you pray for when you want patience, because you'll get it, but it's going to come in the form of something that is going to give you patience. And yet, patience is one of those things that is such a gift from God. When we can be patient with one another, when we can truly listen to each other, when we can truly not just fly off the handle, and trust me, I am so far from that. But the reality is that we need it. And if we can put that patience on, it's going to strengthen. It's going to broaden. It's going to widen the relationship that you have. How about forgiveness? Now, for those of you who have been around here long enough, you know that I have a forgiveness sermon that I love to give from time to time. And forgiveness is one of those things that we're told that if we don't forgive our brothers as Christ has forgiven us, God has forgiven us, God can't forgive us. Forgiveness. And that doesn't mean that we just get rolled over. It doesn't mean that we just get bowled over. It means that we acknowledge that we've been hurt. Acknowledging you've been hurt. When somebody hurts you, how hard can it be to acknowledge? How easy is it to say, oh, I'm fine, I'll carry on. And oftentimes, and that compounds and compounds over time. And we have to admit that we've been hurt. Next one is tougher, though, for forgiveness. Because in forgiveness, once we've admitted we've been hurt, we now have to give up our right to get even. Ow! But Lord, do you know what they did to me? Do you know what they stole from me? Do you know what my sister? Yeah, I do know, says God. Funny thing is, he doesn't ask us to do anything that he hasn't already done.